Welcome to the first of 3 Sankofa Back to Africa events for Black History Month 2022. Thank you all very much for joining us tonight, whether you are a member of OASW, a student or faculty of Carleton University, a special guest panelist, a social worker, or a community guest. I'm Shara Mar-Kaminsky, the OASW Ambassador of Ottawa and the surrounding area, fourth-year Bachelor of Social Work student at Carleton University, Bachelor of Social Work Student Society co-president, and I'll be your host this evening. I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. I am incredibly fortunate and honored to be a guest on Turtle Island and on this unceded, unsurrendered, and traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. I've had the privilege of living, working, and studying in many different regions as a guest, such as the Métis, Cree, Anishinaabe, and Susquehannock, Piscataway, Nantigo nations. Together, we must honor that for our being here is a legacy of colonialism, a legacy of racism and pain, of loss of land and culture. For that, we are each finding our own way to heal, learn, unlearn, and make reparations. Since we are not all located in Ottawa due to the pandemic, I encourage you all to reflect on the land and territory in which you reside, both permanently and temporarily. As we're committed to integrating equity throughout our operations, it is also important to acknowledge Canada's history of enslavement, racial segregation, and oppression of marginalized groups. This history has had a devastating impact on people of African descent. The existence of systemic anti-Black racism and inequality in education, housing, employment, health, criminal justice, politics, and other areas can be directly traced to the complex legacies of the dehumanizing enslavement of African people in Canada. Canada has neither recognized nor educated the public adequately about the historical facts related to slavery and the anti-Black racism it has produced. Despite this, Black Canadians have made outstanding contributions to Canada in every field, which is all the more remarkable given the legacy of slavery. It is necessary to recognize the history of Black Canadians in order to build a more just society, free from discrimination. Along with this, we acknowledge our collective responsibilities and solidarity to restore our commitment to support action and advocacy. The Sankofa Back to Africa series is brought to you by Carleton University's School of Social Work and the Ontario Association of Social Workers. Partnering with Carleton University's Bachelor of Social Work Student Society, the Center for Studies on Poverty and Social Citizenship, and Memorial University. At the Carleton School of Social Work, we teach, study, and carry out research in the profession of social work, and specifically social work practice in the areas of social policy, community work, and clinical interventions with individuals, families, and groups. The school has a long-standing commitment to social justice that underpins our teaching, our research, and our extensive engagement with communities and organizations locally, nationally, and internationally. Our annual Black History Month events are an integral part of the School of Social Work's commitment to serving all students, Indigenous, Black, and racialized students who often express feeling invisible in academic spaces while also feeling hyper-visible in their differences. This event's ultimate goal is to create a space that supports culture change to assist the Carleton community, Ottawa-Gatineau region, and beyond to understand the complex issues associated with diversity and inclusion. The OASW is a voluntary member organization that represents the voices of the social work profession in Ontario. The OASW seeks to reflect the profession's values, foster engagement with current and future social workers, to have positive, effective influence through advocacy, and seeks to expand awareness of the role and impact of social work with the public, cross-sectoral partners, as well as government. OASW members have access to free and low-cost professional development opportunities for skill building and expanding one's professional network. OASW engages their members when connecting with government and other stakeholders on issues relevant to social work. And the OASW provides career supports, discounts on courses, liability insurance, phone plans, shopping, and much more. As the OASW Ambassador of Ottawa and the surrounding area, I lead community building efforts in the area where I work towards facilitating connections among colleagues and provide professional development and network opportunities to address local needs. If you're a social worker in Ontario looking for more opportunities to learn and connect with colleagues, visit OASW's website at oasw.org to learn more. We would like to thank our many partner organizations and volunteers. We believe Africentric social work works, and Black history should be celebrated every day. And now, just a couple of housekeeping reminders to please mute yourself when the panelists are speaking. There will be a Q&A at the end of the discussion. Please use the chat. We encourage participants to maintain a collective culture of care and respect by being respectful in your communications with one another, and to please take care of yourselves if sensitive content may be discussed. French and ASL interpretations are available. Please click the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom menu bar and select the French channel to access live interpretations. ASL interpretations will be available on screen for participants to see at all times. Participants may also select to pin the interpreter's video to your Zoom screen. We have a book giveaway. We will be giving away 5 Africentric social work books, which this entire panel series is inspired by. At the end of the evening, Dr. Melissa Redmond, our moderator, will be asking 1 quiz question for folks to respond to through the chat, and 5 folks who answer correctly will be randomly selected and win their very own Africentric social work book. Winners will be contacted via email to confirm their mailing address. Stay tuned throughout the evening for a chance to win. We'd like to remind you of the upcoming panels for the next 2 weeks. Registrations will be put in the chat box. Join us and register for these sessions if you haven't already. Now I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Melissa Redmond and Daniela Akat, who will be tonight's moderators.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Well, we'll begin by reading just a brief introduction to our special guest this evening. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Mullings. Dr. Delores V. Mullings is a member of a large extended family and mother of 2 living Black queens, a sister, friend, and second daughter and caregiver of Madame Mullings, her original feminist. She is a professor of social work and Memorial University's inaugural Vice Provost, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. She has demonstrated extensive content expertise in human rights and equity leadership in community-based organizations and academic institutions. Her community-based experience is in hostels, sexual assault centers, and child welfare agencies, supporting survivors of intimate partner violence and underhoused people, and mothering, mental health, intimate partner violence and underhoused people and their children. Her interdisciplinary scholarship explores decolonizing post-secondary education and community engagement using critical pedagogies, in particular, anti-Black racism, Africentric theory, and critical race theory. Danielle?
And I have the honor of introducing Dr. Wanda Thomas Bernard. We didn't get a chance to talk, but Dr. Bernard, do you prefer Dr. Bernard, Dr. Senator Bernard, Senator Bernard? Either? Okay, we'll go with Dr. Bernard. So Dr. Bernard was a highly regarded social worker, educator, researcher, community activist, and advocate for social change. She has worked in mental health at the provincial level, in rural community practice at the municipal level, and since 1990s as a professor at Dalhousie School of Social Work, where she also served as director for a decade. In 2016, she was appointed special advisor on diversity and inclusionness at Dalhousie University. And she is the first African Nova Scotian to hold a tenure-track position at Dalhousie and to be nominated for full professor. Dr. Bernard has worked with provincial organizations to bring diversity and to the political process in Nova Scotia and to teach community members about Canada's legislative processes and citizen engagement. She is the founding member of the Association of Black Social Workers, ABSW, which helps to address the needs of marginalized citizens, especially those of African descent. As a former member of the Nova Scotian Advisory Council on the Status of Women, and as its past chair, was instrumental in the development and of advice to ministers regarding frameworks for gender violence prevention and health equity. At the national level, she has served as a member of the National Coalition Advisory Council on the Status of Women. She has served as an expert witness in human rights cases and has presented at many local, national, and international forums. Dr. Bernard has received many honors for her work and community leadership, notably the Order of Nova Scotia and the Order of Canada. Thank you both for joining us today. We're very happy to have you here.
As a token of our thanks and our appreciation, we'd just like to let you know that we will be forwarding 2 pieces of artwork to you. One of the wonderful things about these events is that we can choose to highlight young and emerging Afro-Canadian artists. So for Dr. Mullings, we have the Black print on the left by Fatuma Ku. And so Horlu Soriba, who goes by the pen name Fatima Ku, is a multifaceted artist that is known for her generosity and compassion. Born in Liberia and raised in Canada, she draws inspiration from both connections to her African heritage and Canadian home. Her passion is to encourage each and every one of us to embrace the beauty of storytelling, diversity, and our own uniqueness. Becoming a published author in 2018, Fatima held her first book signing in 2019, and her credo is that we each have a gift and our souls are uniquely crafted to make the world a better place and more inclusive space for everyone. So we'll be sending that along to you, Dr. Mullings. And for you, Dr. Bernard, we're gonna walk this over to your office on the Hill. But for you, we have Fertility by Tembekani Nokomo of the Weep Collective Incorporated, and Narden Meita, who is a member of the Love Factory Incorporated. So Tembekani Nokomo is a Zimbabwe-Canadian filmmaker and multidisciplinary artist based in Kitchener-Waterloo and Ottawa area. Tembe is the founder and CEO of the Weep Collective Incorporated, an art institution focused on the celebration and development of contemporary art the world over. Narden Meita is a Palestinian multidisciplinary artist and writer who uses the artistic expression, often through paint and textiles, to explore diasporic themes of self-exploration. Narden believes that all forms of art are revolutionary and empowerment can be found through its creation. And so we offer these to you in thanks for giving us your time and your expertise. Thank you both very much for being with us this evening. Daniela?
Yes, okay, let us begin. So we just gave our introductions of Dr. Bernard and Dr. Mullings, and we learned about a lot of their accomplishments. But for tonight, what do you think is the most important thing for our audience to know about you? Let's start with Dr. Mullings.
I think one of the most important things I'd like to share is that I'm glad that my mother is doing well tonight. She was really sick over the last many weeks and was very stressful for our family, but we're giving thanks and really is celebrating and want to share the good news with everybody that she's well and doing better every day. Thank you.
We're really glad to hear that. And what about you, Dr. Bernard? What's the most important thing the audience should know about you today?
Oh, I'm just a bit taken aback to hear that news about your mom, Dr. Mullings, but glad that you're sharing good news tonight. So my thoughts and prayers will be with you and her. I would say that one of the things that I would want this audience to know about me is that through all of the work that I've done, I've worked alongside many others. So I've engaged in this work with others from my community, and also with allies, with students, former students, and I feel really grateful for those kinds of opportunities. And I would say that as a community engaged scholar, I have worked really hard to break through glass ceilings, only to discover that there was concrete.
Stay strong.
But never giving up and chipping away at that concrete, not to make a difference for me, but to make a difference for the generations that will come behind me. I acknowledge that I stand on the shoulders of so many that have gone before, and I also welcome those who will come behind, welcome, mentor, support, and sponsor.
Thank you so much. So when we were doing the introductions, we talked about you both individually, and of course, you know, we celebrate in those successes. But when did you two first meet? I'll start with you, Dr. Bernard.
First of all, let me say this. I love the questions. I love the questions, and I especially love this one because it took me back. It took me down memory lane. You said in my bio that I spent a decade as director, and one of the things we get to do as directors, deans and directors, would host an event for doctoral students at the annual conferences. The Canadian, it's now the Canadian Association of Social Work Educators. And at those conferences, those annual conferences, there would always be an event, a meet and greet, so to speak, for doctoral students. I met Dr. Mullings at one of those events, was immediately drawn to her, and encouraged her to teach for us at Dalhousie. Dalhousie School of Social Work has had distance education in place now for, I think, well over 20 years. This was in the early days of our distance education, and meeting Dr. Mullins, who was a doctoral student, and I was looking at the mentorship and sponsorship and saying, come and teach with us. So that's how we met.
And I was going to ask you what you remember about that time, Delores. Dr. Mullings?
It's funny because what I remember the most is that I was doing 2 presentations at that conference, and nobody showed up at those presentations except one of them. Dr. Bernard Thomas showed up. It was my friend, Heather Hare. We were just like, where's everybody? Right? In walked Dr. Bernard Thomas. And I gave my presentation to her. I felt valued, validated. I was happy to actually present, was devastating as a graduate student, to prepare, because I actually stumbled onto the conference. I actually didn't know about it. I stumbled onto it and I said, oh, I'm gonna apply, and I got in, and then there it is. That's one of the conferences. I remember she was the only person, aside from my friend. So she doesn't count. She's just there to support me. That's what stuck in my mind.
Can we stay with that for a moment?
Of course, please.
Yes. I want to stay with that because I remember one of the things that I remember in our initial meeting, just hearing you say, now this was your first conference, but hearing you say, I stumbled upon this conference. that is something that your PhD supervisor should have been encouraging you to present at. You shouldn't have had to stumble upon it. And as we got to know each other, you know, one of the concerns I had was the level of support and sponsorship and mentorship didn't feel as strong as I thought it should be, and certainly didn't feel as strong as what I experienced myself as a doctoral student at the University of Sheffield in England, for goodness sakes, you know, in a different country. So for me, that was part of making that connection. And we've been connected ever since. So I'm grateful.
As I am. That's, you know, that's where I got my first, or maybe second, that's how I got my online training, because I didn't know anything about distance education before. And I remember Dr. Bernard Thomas saying, you know, telling me about this online, and I'm like, I'm not sure about that. And she gave me the lay of the land. We have this kind of supports in place. This is what we do. This is what we do. And I was off and running. Started to build my repertoire.
I know this is not on the list, but it's so interesting to hear. I know how important mentorship is to both of you. And it's so interesting to hear you, Dr. Mullings, talking about what is like the perfect mentoring relationship. Do you know what I mean? Like, fly, little duckling, right? But also we're right here. We're right here for you, right? If you need us. Daniela?
Yeah, wow. I mean, thank you for, that was a good question. Like, we had thought about this question, just getting to know both of you a little bit. But you two weren't the only authors of the book. You two were one of the main authors, but you had a lot of other people contribute to this book. So we were wondering, what was it like to work, and the book was published in 2021, last year. So what was it like to work with such a large number of, or to even organize large number of people for this one book? Let's start with Dr. Mullings.
Actually, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Bernard Thomas, because this book really originated in the belly of ABSW. And I really want to create that space for one of the founding members to actually speak to where the book came from, and, you know, I can piggyback after.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So there's idea, and then there's execution. So yes, the idea started at an ABSW conference. Was that the 35th anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, heavens. Which was held in Halifax. Dr. Mullings was one of the people who came. I remember convening a group of people to have a conversation about the possibility of doing this book. And a number of people expressed interest, and many of those people who expressed interest at that time didn't follow through. And I really want to take this opportunity to publicly thank and commend Dr. Mullings as the lead editor of this book for really picking up the torch and running with it, not just carrying it, but running. She led the marathon with it. I mean, life intervened for many of us. I'm not going to bore you with any of those details, but that passion, you know, if you could think of that passion, so I'm getting tangled up here. If you can think of that passion from the idea and then the impact, it's quite a journey. And Dr. Mullings certainly led that journey to bring this book to fruition. And I would say that we ended up with a really nice mix, academics and practitioners. We ended up with a good mix of content. And it's largely about networking and connecting and encouraging and sponsoring and supporting. Now I'll hand it back to you, Dr. Mullings.
I was so mesmerized listening to. What was the question?
I was wondering what it was like to organize such a large number of authors for this book.
You know, that was actually my first time trying to organize, because, you know, I always thought that I was going to be the person that was going to be third author or fourth or third editor, right? So I wasn't really prepared, but this is what I have to say about what it was like. There were people who just weren't able to, as Dr. Bernard Thomas said, because for lots of reasons. But what was incredible for me is when we started, that there were different ones of us start saying, who should we ask? Because, you know, we've sent out, you know, calls, we're not getting anything, people are busy. And we started tapping people on the shoulder, and people were saying, yeah, sure. It's sometimes in the late stages when, you know, we should have had lots of things done and things didn't work out and we had to start over again many times. And so it was very frustrating at times. It was, I'd say, I won't even say challenging, it was difficult at times, but I learned a number of things from that. When you're working with people that are committed, you can get through just about anything. And when you get into trouble, because believe me, we got into trouble lots of times. You know, we had tensions, this was not a perfect, but you know what? We're still talking to each other.
Right.
You know, we're still, and I'm talking about the ones of us that started at the front, where we've been from year one to year whatever, right? We went through all of that together. But some of those authors, they were incredible to work with. Just so rewarding and so incredible. And I feel really grateful that I've had that opportunity, because it sets a bar for me for the next time around. Again, I'm not saying it was all, you know, smiles and everything was, you know, it was hard work too, right? But so rewarding. This was just, I say all the time, it was a labor of love. And there was a lot of authors here that you can see the love in their work.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Mullings. Actually, in your comments and those of the senators actually segue quite nicely into our next question, which is, before we begin talking sort of more in depth about the concepts that are described and detailed in the book, we're wondering if you could start with Africentric social work, right? And talking about sort of, yes, definitionally, right? But also talking about what it means to you, you know, as it were. And the reason why I sort of said it in that way, means to you, is that I do feel, I wonder if that was also sustaining in this difficult process. Dr. Bernard, please.
I was just going to say, do you want to start, Dr. Mullings?
No way.
Let me start with this by saying, I remember when I returned to Dalhousie after having spent a couple of years in England while I was working on my PhD, and I used Africentric social work in my PhD work, and I was desperate to bring that to Dalhousie, to Nova Scotia, to the Black social workers. And so I created this, I got some funding to do a research project to look at Africentric social work in Nova Scotia. And then from that, was able to offer an elective at Dalhousie back in 1999 on Africentric social work. And I had this vision. The vision was that this was a course that would be taught in all 34 schools of social work across the country. Well, that vision never came to reality, even Even now, right?
Like 1999, I was the only Black person in my class in 1999.
I wasn't even born in 1999.
Oh my goodness. And so but the first time I taught, and so I got approval at the school to offer this course. I remember the first time I thought it, I thought, oh my goodness, what if no one shows up? What if no one takes it? You know, we didn't have many students of African descent at Dalhousie. We still don't really. And so, you know, I thought, well, people think this is only for students of African descent. Anyway, in that first class, I had 30 students.
Oh, wow.
9 of them were students of African descent. There was 1 Indigenous student, and the other students were white. And it was a very powerful class. It truly was a powerful class. It was about the white students unpacking their white privilege to learn about African-centeredness and social work. And for the students of African descent, it was about them being empowered. And one of the tools I used was an assignment called a media watch. And for a 4-week period, the students had to observe the media and media representations of people of African descent and do an analysis of that. And I remember getting these assignments back and actually experiencing vicarious trauma. Because it's one thing to, you know, go about your daily life and see what's in the media and the negativity about people of African descent in the media.
Right.
As I was grading this assignment, I had 30 students identifying several days of negative media, and most of them were different. I mean, it was unbelievable. But you know, a group of students continued to work with me after the class ended. Mm-hmm. And we recruited this tool where we put together pulled the best of the students' assignments, the best of their presentations, and we put together this very powerful video about anti-Black racism in the media. And that video actually won a Human Rights Award.
Oh, wow.
If you can believe that.
I can.
So I share that to say that I believe I feel like we've come of age now. We've come of age because we now have this book, Africentric Social Work. We're moving Africentric social work from the margins. We've been on the margins since 1999 in Canada. You know, there are several in the US. I was talking about what's our situation here in this country, and having this book. I've got it here on my desk. So having this book is a real gift. It truly is a gift, and it speaks to the importance of Africentric social work, not just for people of African descent, but for all social workers in Canada. Just one more little tidbit. I was interviewed on CTV news. Some of you may have seen it. It was on the national news about. It was about Black History Month. I guess they're doing segments all month. But because Wanda Robson died on the weekend, Viola Desmond's sister, they led off with my thoughts about Wanda Robson. I was very close to her. But then she went on to talk about Emancipation Day and the fact that I'd led Emancipation Day, and her question, the interviewer's question was, so tell us why Emancipation Day is important to Black Canadians. My response, any of you who saw it, I started by saying, well, first of all, let me say this. Emancipation Day is important for all Canadians, not just Black Canadians. And I feel the same way about Africentric social work. It's important for all social workers, not just social workers of African descent. I'll stop there and pass the baton to Dr. Mullings.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I would echo that. And here is an opportunity to build on that history and that legacy in social work schools across the country. Because I can tell you that I have not had that experience of teaching fully or facilitating fully an Africentric social work class because of, we have the book, we've had, scholars that are writing more and talking about it more, but we're still, so marginalized that when I begin to talk about an Afrocentric perspective, there are tensions and questions. Why is this course about Black people? How come everything is about race? So you can see already, those are some specific comments that I've had, when I've approached, Afrocentric social work, or even social work that is not what people expect it to be. So for me, it's really important until we see the centering of the Black experience recognized, acknowledged, and honored in schools of social work, we will remain on the margins. And what we, all of us, not just Black people, we need to ensure that this book is not one that everybody is going to pick up and say, look, I have one. And then, in 10 years, people are going to say, oh, we had one. Where is that book? Really, we're depending on every single person. We don't care what their extractions are to promote the book, to use the book in classes, to use the book in the field, because we cannot continue the way we have continued. We cannot continue with the add-on. This book is a signal that the add-on is not okay, doesn't work, has never worked. And here you have a tool. We have a tool that we can use to support learning and teaching and practice.
Yeah. I think it's really sort of interesting to consider while you're both talking, what was going through my mind is this sort of idea of, if you want to understand marginality, right, try to center that knowledge, right? Try to center it and see, right? And see what the resistance looks like, see, experience, right, what the backlash or the pushback on that is like. Do you think that opening this up to a wider audience is, well, obviously you've answered that question. I just realized that as I'm asking the question, you've already answered it. But ultimately, I appreciate what you're saying about this knowledge being of importance to ACB communities and other communities. And I think that is one of the things, thank you, I've come around to the question. I think that's one of the things that you sort of realize in trying to share this kind of knowledge, is that it is constructed as marginal, right? And therefore is treated as marginal. Do you know what I mean? So that it's not important for everyone because it's only for those folks over there. You know what I mean? And so the idea of making our social work education more inclusive by saying no margin is center, I think is a really powerful idea. Daniela?
Yeah, and I think about like my own experience as I'm in my third year of social work, and as I'm learning more, like this book would have been very helpful first year social work when we were just learning about it. Like just like from the get-go, integrating a lot of these concepts would have been so beneficial. So one of the topics that's so let me go back to what we were talking about before. So we were talking in Dr. Mullings' introduction, we mentioned that your interdisciplinary scholarship work explored a lot of decolonizing post-secondary education. Mm-hmm. And so decolonization is a big theme throughout the book. So could you explain, because we'll just assume that there are people who aren't in social work and they haven't heard the term decolonization. Could you explain to the word decolonization and what it means to people who haven't heard it and what it means to you.
Mhm. So the first thing for me to remember is that this is my perspective, and there are lots of people who have different ideas about what decolonization actually means. You know, for different groups, depending on what their histories, where they're situated right now and what's happening, right? So this is not a blanket, this is exactly how it is. So that's the first thing for me to remember. The second thing for me is decolonization in the form, how our education is structured. It's not just simple, the structure. It's not just the curriculum. It's everything about learning and teaching. So it's how we have the desks and who stands at the front of the classroom. It's how, in fact, it's even who sits at the front of the classroom. Just take a look in your classes and see who was sitting where, right? And if you sit there, you know what, who gets a certain kind of attention. So it's all those little nuanced pieces. But the thing about decolonizing education is that it's not about adding in a piece of literature and then hoping for the best. It's actually not about that at all. It's really about ensuring that the learning and teaching space is reflective of our society, the entire microcosm of our society. And that means we need to tackle colonization, racism, anti-Black racism, you know, white supremacy, and all those pieces, and not just put them up as a definition on wherever people put things, but actually look at what is happening. So for example, if we try to decolonize, let's just say one of the social work assessment classes, it actually means we would have to look at all the material that's been used to educate. We need to look at the tests. We need to look at all those pieces of the assessment tools and what are those pieces and what are they saying? The other thing is we really need to connect what's happening in the classroom in terms of when we say decolonization to what's happening in the larger society. So we cannot continue to say we're decolonizing our classrooms in one class, in an entire university or an entire program.
Right.
And so, you know, if you have, I don't know, one of the things that people talk about a lot in terms of what needs to be decolonized is everything. But, you know, if you look at, for example, how we teach philosophy, who shows up in philosophy as the great masters, you know, or sociology, who shows up? So we really need to be looking at who decided those were the great masters and peel away those layers. And we need to connect those pieces to how people live their lives. You know what I mean? So we can't just say, okay, we need to deconstruct this person and then people go outside and it's the same thing. Because when you look on the cinematography, when you look on screens or when you look on billboards or when you go into the museum, whatever you're trying to teach and you suggest in the classroom is going to contradict what's in the museum. So really decolonizing education is really decolonizing our society at large. And we have to start somewhere in education, but you know, we just need to be mindful that it's a lot bigger than just in the classroom, because every person in that classroom is interacting with lots of other things and people outside.
Right. Thank you. And Dr. Bernard, what about you? The same question to you. What does decolonization mean to you in the context of you being a social worker and as a senator?
I don't know if I can add much to what Dr. Mullings has said, actually. But I break it down this way. It's sort of thinking specifically about post-secondary education. It's really about the who. So who are we teaching? So who are our students, but also who's doing the teaching, but also who's in position of management and leadership. And so looking within our institutions, and I think we need to start there. If we And in social work, we're really good at criticizing what's going on out in the world. We're not so good at turning that mirror in and
Right.
looking at what we're doing. So I think decolonizing forces us to do that. But also the what. And Dr. Mullings talked a lot about the what's being taught, and who decides, what those key pieces are in each of our disciplines. Who's deciding that? But it's also the how we're teaching. And for me, the how we're teaching is as important as the what we're teaching. So how are we engaging with students? How are we pulling them in? And how are we preparing them to engage with their communities, with our communities when they leave? So part of that, I think, has to do with what we do in the classroom. But part of that also has to do with the assignments, how creative we are with assignments. I try to be really creative with assignments. I try to give students a lot of scope so that they can really explore a lot with assignments. And some students, quite frankly, hate that. They find it really, really hard. They want to know exactly how many pages you want, and whether it's double space or single, and exactly how many references you want.
Right.
And my answers are always the same. I'm not telling you exactly what I want here, because I could just go and write the paper for you.
Right.
We don't want to do that. So how do we, and so part of it is really getting students to think differently.
Right.
We're not telling them how to think, but we're really encouraging them to step outside the box. So part of that decolonization is about helping people decolonize their own minds.
Right.
And that's huge. That's huge, I think.
Honestly, thank you so much, both of you. And you've just given me an amazing segue. I think, ultimately we can sit and we can talk about these things, but another one of the ways that we can express those ideas is through spoken word and through song, right? And so literally, as you said your last sentence, all I heard was Brother Bob in my head just singing, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery." And so with that, actually, I'm going to ask people to hold these thoughts in their minds. And I'd like to introduce an artist who's going to give us a little bit of an interlude right now. So I'm really pleased to be able to introduce this special performance from the talented Fauzia Acknowledgement, a 19-year-old Nigerian-Canadian slam poet and author of I Never Truly Hated Fauzia, which I never truly hated, but Fauzia has been featured in CTV, on CBC, and in other publications. She's represented London in 2 national festivals, ranking 4th in Canada at the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word in 2019. And Fauzia is a recipient of the 2019 Louis Couret Trailblazer Award from the London Police Service, and was showcased in the 2020 Night of Heroes for Community Living in London, Ontario. So if you will turn your attention to the lovely Fauzia. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you so much for the amazing introduction, Melissa. I have 2 poems I want to share with you guys today. The first one is one of my favorites, and I think that it really, really applies to the theme of this entire beautiful, beautiful symposium. It's called The Truth and Its 3 Sides. I'm a child from Africa. I was 5 when I left Nigeria, meaning my tongue was stamped with the colors green and white. My accent acted like a metal door lodged in my throat that only allowed certain words to pass through. The kids at school did not understand me. I dressed funny. My clothes were scented with food that the kids at school didn't even know how to pronounce, let alone eat. I used to be really close to my Africa. Some of you now know just enough about me to assume that this country is the axis that the sun revolves around. You will know just enough about Africa to assume I should be grateful to be here. I was a child from Africa, meaning I have seen savannah. I've seen all the beauty of a rainforest under the balls of my feet. I didn't have to search far to see a waterfall in any direction. I was 5 when I left Nigeria, meaning I grew up in the only place that my melanin ripens all year round. I was 5 when I left Nigeria, meaning I was never a child from your Africa. I mean, my Africa. I mean, the Africa. The truth often has 3 sides. The truth is, when I look at your Africa, I see bones protruding out of skin, flesh barely hanging on, teeth chattering, dirt-stained cheeks. Your photos reek of blame and sickness, and the scent of a third world country can be smelt from half a world away. I am a child from Africa, meaning I am a survivor of hunger, right? I must have blistered feet, sand-cracked knuckles, knees scraped, dirt stains running through my veins. Yes, I am dirty. How could I not be? Coming from a land where the sky is painted yellow instead of blue, where dirt and soot and disheveled concrete is my only mode of transportation, where $1 can feed a room of people who look like me for a whole week. Truth is, your Africa has taken my Africa away from me. Sometimes I can't tell the difference between a picture of Nigeria and a herd of cattle. Sometimes I see a photo of Nigeria and I am rattled at how my parents could have lived in a country so far behind in development. You have to settle for 3rd place, but then I realize we are seen as uneducated by people who still think Africa is a country, still think I must have crawled on all 4s out of its jungle, still think I went to school on a camel. My parents were dared to be called poor by a country sunken in credit, by a country that uses colored bodies as mortar for the building blocks to a society, by a country that dismembered indigenous identities at its dinner tables and then asked us why we didn't want to partake in the feast, by a country that stole the land beneath their feet, grabbed it with both hands, wrapped it in barbed wire, and trademarked it with beavers and a red and white flag. This country likes to uproot the land we walk on, use third world bodies to fertilize its soil, and then remind us of all the development it's made. The truth often has 3 sides, often wraps its arms around our necks, keeps us in its chokehold long enough for us to feel the ground sink beneath our feet. The truth is the whiplash upon impact that is the blunt force trauma. The truth is your Africa stole my Africa's identity. The truth is I was 5 when I left Nigeria, so your Africa is all I know about. My homeland, it is yellow filters, it is dirt, it is hunger. From the sharp edge of the world, I am a child from Africa, I think. Thank you. That is the first poem I wanted to share with you guys today. I'm just gonna get a really quick drink of water because I'm a little out of breath.
Thank you so much, Fauzia. We will wait.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The second poem I wanted to share with you guys is called My Africa, who made me believe that I can do anything. Tree branches for arms, cradles for hands, voices like silk, and yet they commanded a room with it. I wonder how a place can be both pillar of strength and phoenix, be both roots and leaf, both stem and flower. My Africa did not let me laugh when I was given a compliment, did not let me deny any praises for my success, scolded me for being timid, for allowing people to think I am anything less than a force to be reckoned with. My Africa pushed me past the finish line I found constantly escaping my grasp, guided me out of running infinite laps of defeat inside my head, sat with me during lunch breaks when I didn't have anyone else. My Africa taught me many things, and I'm still learning. I'm learning that my Blackness does not require an apology, that my loudness is just as worthy of attention. I am learning that confidence is not rude or vulgar. It is not attention seeking or unsophisticated. I am learning that the sun does not need to prove to all the other planets how bright it can shine. It just needs to shine. So to my Africa, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this amazing event. I loved hearing the speakers and all the amazing people that spoke today. I'm going to give it back to Melissa now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fauzia, for dropping knowledge on us. I don't know about anybody else, but I have shivers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope we will see you again next week and the week thereafter as well. Yes, and please, Fauzia, take a look at the chat where folks are singing your praises. Thank you so very much for sharing those two poems with us. I am going to turn it actually back to Daniela to give us, sort of to ask for us one more question, and then we'll turn it over to questions from the audience. We'll give a few more moments for questions from the audience.
Right, thank you. And thank you, Fauzi. Very good work, very good work. I was like, speak, sister, speak. Okay. So I'm as I said before, I'm a third-year student and I am almost graduating. So I'm about to enter the field of social work. And I see a lot of my my classmates who are in this meeting. So I'm very happy to see them here. So my question to both of you is, what advice do you have for future Black social workers who are just about to enter this field? We can start with, I don't know who wants to start, but maybe Dr. Bernard can start.
I think Dr. Mullings can start this time.
So, as future social workers, there are a couple of things I would suggest. One, Africa wasn't destroyed in a day. And that means, you kind of get what that means, you know, the journey is long. Do not give up. Do not allow anyone to push you out and allow you to, or encourage you or motivate you to lose your way. Do not give anyone that power over you. I know sometimes we're talking about imposter syndrome. I don't even know where that word came from. Do not allow those words and those energies to stick to your bodies, to your spirits, to your mind. They are destroying, and you do not have time for colonial and racist words to destroy you. What you can also do is ensure that you create networks. You cannot do this alone. You absolutely cannot do this alone. And one of the things I say is that you're not the prime minister of any country, at least not yet. And you're not the president of any university or institution, at least not yet. So you do not have to carry that kind of burden, because sometimes we think like we see things and we really feel that we need to do it. Yes, it needs to be done, but we need to do it in partnership and in collaboration, because this work is for everybody, right? So develop your networks, make sure that you have people that you can call on, talk to, work with, depend on. So I'm going to use the loose word ally. So ally are people who we determine get the name. They don't get to call themselves that. You know, that's just, you know, we've been saying that for a while. But you know, you develop, you know, relationships with people who you believe as best as they possibly can, because people are not perfect, that they can support you and they'll have your back. Because sometimes you might not want to use your words, and somebody who's in a different position in terms of the institution, you know, where they're positioned, I mean, institutionally, economically, and whatever else, you might need somebody to speak on your behalf. And that's a part of also keeping yourself safe. I'm not saying don't speak at all, because one of the things we do is we're always speaking, right? We're always speaking. The labor is heavy, so mediate it and balance it so that, as I said, you know, remember that this work is not an overnight piece of work. The other thing is, don't forget our elders and the people that are even younger than you. Here we have one of our elders, Dr. Wanda Bernard Thomas. Use the knowledge that they have, because boy, I tell you, some of the tricks that they have, we have no clue about them because we have these things and we think we have everything, right? We have all these social media things, but they have some of the foundational pieces that were passed on to people before them. So we and you have to get it from them as well. The other thing is, to me, you know, how you do this work is really reciprocal. You know, so you're learning and teaching and other people are learning and teaching. It's not about you teaching somebody or you only opening your head and getting knowledge, right? And so that means you go the other way as well with people who are younger than you. So always for me is a bit of a circle where you have yourself, you have the elders, you have people who are younger, you have allies, and you have people in different spaces, places, you know, positions of power that can offer some support to some of the work that you want to do. The other thing is, and this, you know, Dr. Wanda Bernard Thomas is really good at this as well. Going to here, or try that. What about this? What about that, right? So encourage other people as well and keep looking for yourself to where you can go next. So I remember her saying to me, you know, what about being a dean? She used to send me these emails all the time, being a dean. And I'm like, I do not want to be any dean. But the thing is, that's a part of the sustainability, and that's a part of what helps you to make the changes. Maybe not right this minute, but you know, there are always opportunities where you can get yourself, where you can help to make those changes, because unless we are at the table, nothing gets done. You cannot depend on anyone else to do it for you. You need to do it for yourself in partnership and collaboration with other people. But that also means you need to be at the table. Otherwise, our people continue to die.
Thank you, Dr. Mullings.
So I used to send her these notices. She didn't want to be dean, but now she's a VP.
Right?
Hallelujah.
We see you, Dr. Mullings. We see you.
Yes, we see you and we follow you. And I would call myself a seed planter. And that's seed planting. So I'm going to plant a seed tonight. There are two social workers, Black social workers in Ottawa, who have this vision of starting an association of Black social workers in Ottawa. When they have their flyer ready for their event, I'm going to send it to Dr. Redmond, and she can send it off to anyone who's here, who's interested. That's what networking is about. That's what giving back to your community is about. And you have that, I don't want to use the word safety because it's never safe, but there's some comfort in numbers. And so when you're working together, and that's what Dr. Mullings was saying, really the networking, it's so very important. And our networks are a little different than mainstream networks. And I don't know how I would have survived much of what I've survived if it had not been for ABSW.
Right.
So seeing groups, that was another vision, you know, that we'd have the national charter and there would be other chapters across the country. Part of that vision from 1979. And it's slowly happening. There's a group now in Alberta, very strong group in Alberta. And I have this vision of a group forming in Ottawa very soon. We've got two very committed people who want to make that happen. We started in Nova Scotia with four. There were four of us, only four. And we were able to get policy changes. So, you know, the sky's the limit now.
That's one of my favorite stories. One of my favorite stories of yours, Dr. Bernard. It's the description of you going to that policy meeting and being like, our association, right? Our association feels that this is the policy direction that we should be going in. At the time, the association had 4 members, right? And was able to make change, right? And so I really do appreciate what Dr. Mullings was saying about also sitting at your feet, right? And learning the ways, as it were. I'm just going to invite anyone who may have a question for either Dr. Mullings or Dr. Bernard to type it away in the chat. We do have some people who will be helping us with that. So if you do have a question, please get to tip tapping. And I don't know, Daniela, what do you think? Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. Yeah.
Sorry, just before you ask it, there are two things that I wanted to say. Dr. Bernard, while you were talking about that class that was taught in 1999, there are actually people who are present today who remember it and remember it quite fondly. So I wanted to pass that along to you, and to also let folks know that Michelle Sangster has put a link in the chat that folks may want to look at. So sorry, Daniela, please.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, if there are no questions in the chat, we have other questions.
Wait, no, somebody raised their hand. Somebody raised their hand.
Yes, Jenny Sturzaj.
My question is, if you were to begin the process of writing this book today instead of, so many years back, I don't know, do you think you'd end up with the same product? I haven't personally read the book, but do you think you would have approached the work differently, or you would have written about different things or come to a different conclusion at the end?
I think that's difficult to answer because it's an edited book. You're really relying on who's willing to write, and we typically come from a very oral tradition, so committing to writing, it's just not part of our nature. So we have to force ourselves into that form of the discipline. So because it's an edited book, it really would largely depend on who will respond. So we put out a call for submissions, but we also reached out to people. I would say that one of the things that would be different today is that there's a bit of a larger audience of people to reach out to. Would you agree, Dr. Mullings, that there are a few more people now in the field from our communities? So it gives us a bit of a bigger pool to draw from. I think that would be different, but other than that, I'm not sure.
Yes, because what we did, we looked at the gaps in the book as well and tried to identify people who we thought could help to fill those gaps. Because one of the things, and obviously there's still gaps, right? Because, some of the people that were writing, as we said, just couldn't finish or for whatever reason. But if you note, we also shifted as time shifted and circumstances shifted. So you will notice that we have a COVID under lockdown chapter. And that chapter was a very, 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 very late inclusion. And it was done over a very short period of time under very unconventional circumstances, like not sleeping, because we thought that it was important to document that experience in this book, particularly at this historical time. You see?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to read a question from the chat. This is from Cameron Forrester. What keeps you both motivated to continue in the field of social work? And where did your motivation come from? I know for you, Dr. Mullings, it's Mudda Mullings, right? But whoever would like to take it first, where did your motivation come from? What keeps you motivated to continue the work?
Mhm.
Maybe I'll start with this one.
Please.
I think that I was born into social work because of life circumstances, and I won't take the time to go into that at the moment, but just to say that my life journey certainly led me into social work. And also, I would say that as a child of the civil rights movement, I have benefited so much from the sacrifices that have been made from these social activists, the community development workers, the civil rights leaders in Nova Scotia and in Canada. Although we don't teach about civil rights in this country, when we talk about civil rights, we're talking about the African American experience.
Right.
So I want to just put on the record here that I'm a child of the Nova Scotia civil rights movement. And as a child of that movement, I've lived the dreams of my ancestors. I've lived the vision of my ancestors. My ancestors were pushing for us to have opportunity. My ancestors pushed, I don't know if people know this, but in 1969, there was what's called the Metro 9. And I was reminded of this by a journalist in Ottawa when I received an honorary degree from Carleton back in June. And a journalist interviewed me, and they found this story about the Metro 9.
Okay.
So who was the Metro 9? The Metro 9 was the largest number of African Nova Scotian students to graduate from high school in any one year and to go on to university. And we were dubbed the Metro 9. And so there's a story written about the Metro 9 and what we got up to in our lives. I want to write about the Metro 9. I think that's a story that needs to be told. And I think the idea of the Metro 9, follows this idea of the Little Rock 9. So everyone's heard about the Little Rock 9, but nobody heard of the Metro 9. Just like everyone's heard of no one had heard of Viola Desmond.
But everyone's heard of Rosa Parks.
Everyone knows Rosa Parks. You mention Rosa Parks, people know. Mention Little Rock 9, people know. So we were the first people from the Metro Halifax area to go to university.
Right.
And that was made possible because activists in an organization called the Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of, hold it, colored people.
I knew it was coming.
But that organization had a mix of African people, but also white folks who were really keen allies who were working with members of our community to make a difference. And part of what they were doing, what they were saying back in the 60s was, part of what we need to do to make a difference is to create opportunities for these kids to go on to post-secondary education. And all 9 of us went on, and all 9 of us ended up, I think, in quite brilliant careers. But it wasn't just the work we were doing for our individual uplifting.
Right.
It was really what we were doing to uplift the race.
Right.
So those are the things that keep me motivated. Those are the things that led me into social work as a career option. And those are the things that keep me passionate. I'm just as passionate about social work today as I was when I entered the field back in 1977 or became a student back in 1975. I still feel that passion for social work, and I maintain my social work license. In fact, I say I'm a social worker who's moonlighting as a senator.
Lottie. Right. I don't know if you had anything to add, Professor Mullings?
Yeah, so I'll add that I stumbled into social work because I was frustrated and angry with social workers that I was encountering in the hostel, shelter, and sexual assault centers that I worked.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
That's why I went in. You know, there's another piece to it, but that was a big piece.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to what I say social work school, and I thought, what? I'm not there. This is not how it's done. I said, those poor, I'm telling you, those poor professors, because I was a mature student by that time, you know, they didn't know what to do with me, you know. But I remember my first social work class, I remember saying, this is not how it's done. I'm going to be a social work professor. Now I'm a mature student. I have mortgage, young pick-me, young child, if you didn't understand pick-me. You know,
small person, little child.
Yeah. You know, and here I am talking about quitting my job and going into full-time social work, because really my aim was to help transform social work education so that we could transform social work practice. Mm-hmm. And that is why I facilitate social work education the way I do. And that's why I write the way I write. Mm. I don't write for other social workers or for academics. I write for students and I write for practitioners. So if you look at how I write, it's, for the most part, you know, it's easy. There's not a lot of jargon and certain kinds of things. So I'm motivated to, and you see, it's a pretty wide lens, right? So if you want to transform social education, social work practice, that means that there's a big, my intent is to have a huge impact on the world. So not just for my children, but for their children and their children. And by the way I facilitate education, when I started doing certain kinds of things like student-centered learning, decolonization in the classroom, I had my mother in mind, because I could actually see that there was a potential that she was going to end up having to work with social workers. I could see that like very early. Yeah. And I said to myself, I actually need to facilitate education so that when students are done, they will be able to work with my mom. If they can work with my mom, they can work with anybody. My mom is courageous, she's insightful, she's a visionary, she's tenacious, no holds bar everything, right? Strong-minded and willed, that's where I get mine. You know what I mean? So, so that's a part of it. And so I'm really invested in this broad work. And that's why I, you know, pick away at who's the administrator, or why is it sort of like what Senator Bernard Thomas said. It's like, who is the administrator? Who are the teachers in the classroom? Why is it set up like that? Can we do something different? Mm-hmm. Why do we have to do it this way? You know, and you know, to be honest, I don't want to say I didn't care. I wasn't concerned when students were unhappy. Because when you do things differently, a lot of times it's not just students, people are going to be unhappy. Yeah. And when you're already trying to bring the systemic marginalization into the center, you're a suspect. Mm. And so there's more challenge in doing that. But I was, you know, that was part of my vision. And I'm still motivated. I'm in administration, but don't think I don't have some of those same ideas. It's just a matter of learning how to do it from an administrative point of view, right? Because now the lens is even broader.
Right. I am going to take note of the time and ask the question that we promised for the giveaway, so that if you want to be considered for one of the copies, one of the 5 copies of Africentric social work that we have available for this evening, the lovely Africentric social work. I was reading mine on a train, and so mine has a big sticker on it. It has a big VIA sticker on it that I cannot get off. But here is the question for tonight. All you have to do is put your answer in the chat, and we'll be taking sort of a random selection. When was Africentric social work published? When was Africentric social work published? We're not here to trip anybody up. We're not here to, oh, look. Oh, a whole bunch of people know the answer. So glad to see it. So glad to see it. And I just want to turn it over to Daniela to give us our final comment and question.
I think maybe what's fair for the giveaway is to do the first 5 people who responded, because nobody got this answer wrong. Everybody knew. No. Shara is going to be looking into it, and we're gonna collect the names and take care of that. Not so much tonight, but we will be contacting people in the very near future to get your mailing address, etc. Yes, and I'm just going to I'm going to follow the suggestion. You get a book, and you may get a book, or you may get a book, and you may get a book. Thank you so very much, Dr. Mullings and Dr. Bernard. It is always a pleasure to hang out with you. I know we had this conversation, Daniela and I, earlier today with regards to how excited we were. This is greater. I was super excited, and I knew it was going to be great, but I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your generosity on behalf of those assembled, for the generosity that the 2 of you have always shown me, and for actually opening up and allowing us to have this book as a platform from which we can launch into further and wider conversations. I want to let people know I really saw the thoughtfulness in the questions in the chat, and some of them actually can be answered by other panelists that we will have available. So we'll be taking note of those. We're doing our best to do that, and having those questions integrated into our questions for the coming weeks. Please join us next week next week on the 16th and on the 23rd, when we will be having similar conversations with other authors of Afrocentric social work, and we'll be able, in that way, to be able to gain, to understand what Afrocentric social work means to different practitioners and educators. Daniela, did I forget anything? No, I think we've covered it all. I just want to say thank you to both of you. I really, really appreciate. I've never had a book that is like about me in a social work context. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like I wrote to y'all in the email. It's my first time meeting y'all in person, and you've been so lovely. And I have your emails now, so expect some emails in the future.
Don't be frightened. She's fine. She's fine.
Thank you.
Could I say
no,
one
go ahead.
thing?
Sorry.
Oh, no.
You know, I want to thank Melissa, Dr. Redmond for taking this on, and to, you know, making sure that this whole 3 series has happened. I also want to say, I just love sharing the stage with Senator. I feel like it's bell hooks. It's kind of like, yes, you know. I feel so honored and so pleased, you know, to share this stage with you, Senator Wanda Bernard Thomas. And, you know, as I listen to you speak, I learned so much about lots of different little nuggets of things. So I also want to thank you for doing things your own way so that all of us can continue to learn. And thanks for those seeds.
Thank you for that. And let me say, well, Bell Hooks died. I wept when she died. And I just can't believe the number of people who've died in the last little while that had such meaning for me, and for you to bring her name up this evening.
Yeah.
That's very touching.
Mhm.
I laughed a lot tonight, and I needed to. And so I thank you. I thank you. I mean, the questions, the reflection, the opportunity to engage with Dr. Mullings. And Daniela and Dr. Redmond, you were very gracious with your questions.
Mhm.
And it's been a rough week so far.
Mm.
And I almost missed tonight because the time was put in my calendar wrong. So I would have been an hour later.
Mhm.
But Delores sent me a note and I said, oh my goodness, I almost missed it. So thank you for even reaching out
Mhm.
literally minutes before we started. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to laugh this evening. And for me, laughter is a way of dealing with the pain and the trauma that comes to us every day in ways that we don't even expect.
Mhm.
So thank you for being that space for me this evening.
Mhm.
And the series looks wonderful. I'm going to try my best to attend them.
No, I hope you can. And thank you so much. This just to let folks know that we have participants and organizers who are all over the country, and so there has been a lot of PST, EST. What time zone are we talking about when we're meeting?
Yeah.
Again, I appreciate your presence, doctors. I also appreciate the presence of our audience. Thank you so much. We will take note of your questions. I hope you can join us again for another conversation next week. Thanks so much. Let us know your suggestions, etc. Thank you, doctors, for the work that you've done and that you continue to do. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for doing a wonderful job moderating, Dr. Redmond and Daniela. Thank you so much tonight for your wonderful participation and insights and sharing, Dr. Mullings and Thomas Bernard. So thank you everyone to our audience for your presence and participation. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of your questions, but we will make a note of those. The OASW will send out feedback forms that are an important part on guiding the direction of events like tonight's Sankofa Back to Africa event and your needs. Please take a few minutes that are needed to share with us your thoughts. Thank you again. We hope you will join us again next Wednesday, February 16th at 6 p.m. for part 2 of this amazing Black History Month event. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.